Hello and welcome to our session on the cure for tech fatigue. Today we'll be talking about tech fatigue, what that means to Kitchell as an organization, and how we've built a plan to avoid it. My name is Mike Fitch. I'm a project director. I've been in the industry for about 20 years, mostly out in operations, running jobs, helping manage jobs. And in the past couple of years, I've taken on a side job of operational excellence within our organization to work with our ops tech and learning development groups in this field.
And hi, I'm Andy Lane. I'm a construction technologist for Kitchell Contractors. Currently, I research, vet, implement, and train on new business processes and tech solutions. I've been in the industry for just over 6 years. I started as a project engineer and quickly became disillusioned by the state of technology in our industry and moved into this role because of it.
So we've kind of laid out our approach to curing tech fatigue into 3 different steps. One being out with the old and in with the new, the old ways of doing things and the requirement to kind of shift your focus and your strategy on all that. And then concentrating on being organized and agile throughout that process. And the last portion being making sure you're focusing on being customer centric, whether that's an internal customer, being your end users out on the job sites or in your offices, or your external customers being your clients, your design teams, that side of things. So getting back to the out with the old and in with the new theme, we're talking about, like, a good example is, data silos at home. You get done with a long day of, pre-construction or an interview or a big job meeting, and you just want to come home and sit down and pour your favorite beverage and turn the music on. If you haven't thought about all the new tech devices and platforms that are in your home, creating a smart home, you might sit down with that beverage and yell at Siri to turn on the music, and nothing happens. And then you realize, oh yeah, that's Alexa. Hey Alexa, go turn on Kiss. I want to relax. So that type of organization, while I didn't, and a lot of people probably didn't think that out, it's similar to construction in your organization. If you don't have a well thought out plan, you're going to have 15 different platforms and silos that you're going to get confused and frustrated in just trying to run your home, your music, your front porch lights, anything like that, your AC. So it's a good example of kind of your personal version of data silos and making sure that you're really being intentional about the organization and your plan moving forward with all of this new technology.
So as Mike said, we have the same problems with construction tech. Today, we're all being bombarded by news articles, conferences, and random sales calls about new construction tech solutions. Construction tech has been one of the most lively sectors for investors in recent years. $11.8 billion has been invested in over 1,000 companies, and more than half that number has been raised in just the past 3 years. With all that money, unfortunately, it's still a very highly fragmented market. More than half of the tech vendors out there only address 1 to 2 use cases. There are a lot of single-purpose solutions, and it's easy to fall into the trap of fragmentation. It's also easy to get fatigued by the sheer amount of shiny new stuff that's out there, which is why we're here today having this conversation. We as Kitchell Contractors fell into this trap many years ago. During this time, we didn't have dedicated people like Mike and I devoted to operations technology. Our processes were cobbled together from different legacy systems. We used spreadsheets and basically cobbled together from different decades. Although we were very entrepreneurial during this time, our teams only thought in terms of what was best for them or their project, and we weren't thinking very globally. These point solutions seemed like a quick fix at the time, but unfortunately ended up causing more fatigue due to the amount of disconnected data and processes. And with that, we didn't have a very strong platform. We were missing the heart. Our project management system at the time, while it was sufficient for many years, it didn't have any open APIs, and most importantly, it wasn't very user-friendly. So we needed to eliminate those silos and disconnected processes. After all, you don't want your teams moving through 4 different applications for one simple task, like we were doing with RFIs, which I'll show you in a minute.
Another advantage of combining all of the platforms into one and establishing different pieces of technology across your entire organization is that you don't lose the experience and lessons learned and the training and development on a particular piece of platform or piece of technology. So, for instance, if you've got 3 different job teams using 3 different systems to do job site captures, they all spread to the wind at the end of their project. They go to their next project, and maybe a different project is using a different item, and they have to relearn that. And maybe they love their last product, but this new job team's already up and running, and they have to go through and learn something new. So standardization is really part of the foundation of this as well.
So we needed a good foundation. We needed a single robust platform that checked the most boxes for us. And Procore became the heart of our tech stack. And every one of the solutions that you see on the screen now has some sort of Procore integration, either directly or indirectly. And we were able to move a lot faster and roll out more tools because of it. The question becomes, how did we as Kitchell achieve this level of organization in really such a short time?
Yeah, really what we figured out early on is you need a recipe for success. And that recipe doesn't start with technology. As counterintuitive as it sounds, technology is the last ingredient of that recipe. You have to start with your culture and your people. You have to have senior leadership that fully supports it and is communicating out that we're rolling in this particular manner, and this is part of our overall organizational strategy. So you need to make sure you've got people, cheerleaders, that are really part of that process and that believe in it and that believe that everybody else is part of it too. The next part of that process and that recipe is the process itself. You need a clearly defined valuation process of any particular piece of technology. Does it meet your objectives and key results? Does it fit within your organizational mission statement and your objectives? And then lastly, you get to that technology. And again, you go back to, are our culture and our people, are they going to embrace that? And do we have the process to properly evaluate that technology? Is it mobile? Is it easy to use? Is it scalable? Does it add value to your end users, to your customers?
So one of the first things that you should do to help with your tech fatigue is to go out and identify your subject matter experts or your SMEs. One of the quickest ways to kill your digital transformation is to go and try and do it all yourself. Find the passionate ones out there, the people who are excited to help their peers learn more effective solutions. Share your vision with them and your direction, and go and recruit them. Even if they're on a job team and they can't spend very much time on anything else, getting them on board with your strategy will help you advance the ball in the long run. And Mike, I think one of our greatest examples of this is probably Jeff Manders.
Yep, Jeff started out as a Vicon engineer on one of our projects, just doing the modeling side of things, and we kind of transformed him into the technology guru on that particular job site. And he's been an amazing cheerleader for us and has really embraced what he's been tasked with, which is, taking a bunch of these pilot technologies and going out and really seeing what they can do, how easy they are to use or how difficult, and getting input from the rest of his 30-person team on the value. Is it adding steps? Is it net neutral? Is it taking away steps of everyone's daily task, which is eventually what we want? Or we want to be able to create, a data warehouse that we can actually use, the information coming in to make decisions in the future. So Jeff's been great about that. One of the particular pieces of technology that he uses on a daily basis is OpenSpace, and it's a 360 walkthrough capture. And over the course of the last year, he's captured over 6 million square feet of the particular project that he's on, and they've really been a great partner for us. So it's been easy for us to then communicate that out to the rest of our organization on how successful that particular piece of technology is and how it can be useful to the rest of our projects. So conversely, you don't want to dictate to people that they're going to be your subject matter experts. You don't want a cheerleader that doesn't want to pick up the pom-poms. So you need to let those folks kind of see how this works and provide them with the opportunity to, raise their hand and say, hey, I want in on the next one, or I found this piece of technology out there. Is it, does it align with one of our, strategic goals, and can I test it out? How do I test it out? How do I give you feedback?
And continuing along the lines of culture and people, before you get into the weeds of the processes, you have to know what's important. You have to know what the overall strategy is of your organization and where you're going. OKRs, or objectives and key results. That methodology was something we started exploring a few years ago. We were very excited about it, but quickly realized that we were a little ahead of the game. Our culture wasn't quite ready for it. But this is our first year in following that methodology, and I feel it makes it easy to stay aligned with what the company goals are. And it really allows you to refocus so you're not getting sidetracked or derailed by the ongoing swirl that happens naturally in any business.
Yeah, this is a huge part of, avoiding that tech fatigue, right? You need to explain the why of why you've got a particular piece of technology that you're implementing. An example of an OKR for us was we took the data from all of our safety inspections, and one of our goals for the year was, like every year, is to reduce the number of injuries and illnesses. So we took all that data and figured out that if a particular project has a certain amount of safety exposure observations, then our incidence on that particular project would go down. So we've taken that technology and aggregated the data, and we're able to look at which projects are meeting our key results in order to hit our objective. Secondary advantage of that data that we pulled from the technology is which types of injuries are floating to the top are more common, and then training against those at a job site level so that we can actually focus our efforts on the slip, strips, and falls if they're more prevalent than a housekeeping issue or a trenching issue or something like that. So just taking that data and that technology and utilizing it for that. So a big picture with any change within your organization, you want to look at the effective way to manage complex change. And you can Google this matrix on any rural website. You can just put in effective ways to manage complex change. And you can see there's 5 different steps to any complex change that you need, and you need all 5. And if you're missing one of them, you're going to create a different issue that will result in that fatigue. And it relates directly to technology implementation as well. So in this case, obviously, if you go across the top, if you don't have the vision and you've got everything else, you're going to create confusion. If you don't have skills, you're going to create anxiety, and so on down the path there. So we really take a look at this and make sure that that's part of any tech implementation or evaluation that we're considering.
So currently, Kitchell's tech evaluation process looks a little something like this. We always start with needs analysis, and we ask ourselves, is this an organizational objective? Or is it something regional or more project specific? And why are we pursuing this change? From there, we move on to the process map. What you see on the screen here is a process map that we did with JB Knowledge back in 2017. Embarrassingly, this was our RFI process at the time. But process mapping is extremely helpful in the beginning, as it allows you to see the whole picture and how many stakeholders are touching that process. It also becomes a record that will help you generate a return on investment analysis later on. Comparing the process map before and after can make a really big impact to leadership when they start asking you, what have you been doing? And then requirements. So requirement matrices are not exactly fun, and sometimes they seem like more of a formality, but they're very necessary. They become your handbook or your manual for the tools and processes that you're pursuing. And when combined with the process map, the requirements really help you to ensure that you have all the appropriate stakeholders in that process. One of my worst fears is rolling out a new solution and nobody knows that Jane Doe from Department C over here touches that process. And we totally skip her input. That can completely derail your initiative. So it is critical that you have all the stakeholders in the room when developing these requirements.
Yeah, just to further emphasize this portion of the process, it's very important to create the vision and to ensure that you're headed in the right direction of that, that particular piece of technology that you're evaluating. So, like Andy said, make sure you've got all the different touch points, the folks that are doing the thing that you're trying to solve for, so that you understand, there might be something that you don't know is a pain point for them that is a must-have in a new process or technology. So you need their input, and you need to be able to take this requirements matrix and apply it to 4 different solutions or options, so that you can really look through a lens that's unbiased and not influenced by some new shiny portion of a technology, but the overall really value of that product and that process.
And so from requirements, we move on to product recommendations. This is where you refer back to your requirements and you determine what product checked the most boxes. And what tools are people talking about most in the industry. From product recommendations, we do move on to development if needed. Does this new tool or process require some IT involvement or coding? It is important to keep those lines of communication with your IT teams open. If you're not aligned on the same page as far as priorities go, you will run into friction. From there, we pilot, and you have to have a pilot on 1 to 2 projects to test the real world scenarios. And testing small gives you the opportunity to pull back or pivot as needed. If you're going to fail fast. And then lastly, implementation. You got to ask yourself, is this scalable? Is this something that can be implemented across the organization, or is it just for a subset of projects? And how will you roll it out, and what training resources will be required?
Yeah, and to put a finer point on the pilot and beta step of this entire process, you need to make sure you've got a well thought out feedback tool for those folks that are piloting the technology. They've got their day job, so yeah, they're taking on an extra task to test something out. But if they don't have a nice, defined process on how to provide feedback and what to look at, then they're gonna say, yeah, it looks good, and keep moving. And then you've got this piece of technology you have a thumbs up on, but you don't know why, and you don't know what it does to serve as a value add piece of technology or process within your organization. And then to further highlight what Andy was talking about, as far as failing fast, you have to be willing to cut the cord, even if you've spent some money on a piece of technology to pilot it. Some of the pieces of these new companies that, like Andy said, there's billions of dollars worth of money invested in these things. A lot of them are not ready for market, or they don't fit within your organization. So once you realize that, don't try to shoehorn it in and make it work. You can provide feedback to the technology partner and say, hey, when are you going to get to this level? And when you do, we'll evaluate it again. But if it's not there, and it doesn't look like it's going to get there anytime soon, you gotta be comfortable with moving on to another solution, or waiting to solve for that problem and coming back at a later date when technology is caught up. So kind of backing up to the resources portion of managing change effectively. In our organization, we've got this flywheel that has the resources that can identify each one of those 5 steps in managing change effectively and plan for it. So we've got our operational excellence side and this entire evaluation process that provides the knowledge from the field and from building and from years of actually managing construction. You've got an R&D side that can spend the time and go out and look at the solutions and see which peers, you might want to take 4 different solutions on any particular process as you're evaluating it. Your operations technology group needs to be involved to understand how that technology gets wrapped into your overall platform. So you're not, like Andy said earlier, you don't want to have a bunch of different silos. So does this new technology tie into your platform, and is it a nice, smooth, and seamless process? And then finally, you have to have learning and development resources. You can't fully evaluate this, new technology, even if it's with a group of SMEs and pilot and data folks out in the field, and then just say, yep, this is what we're going with. Hey, company, here you go, start using it. You need training and you need resources for anybody that's got questions as they ramp up on a project. So you need that learning and development piece established, and you need to provide the input from the feedback of those testers and the evaluators to make sure that the questions that you've answered throughout this process are being communicated out to the rest of your team as you implement.
So once you've nailed the people and the process, we can finally get to the technology part. We came up with these minimum requirements to follow for all tech procurement here at KCI. Number one is it has to be easy to use, user-centric, and it has to have an explicit understanding of our users and their environments. Number two, it has to be mobile and cloud-based. We're a very remote industry, job sites spread out all over, so this one's kind of a given. Three, it has to have a minimal customization. If it requires 6 to 8 months of development, probably going to be a no-go for us. So it's got to be out of the box, ready just as much as possible. And then 4, manageable. Can this be managed by one person? These days, we can't afford to hire another person, and IT can't afford to manage another application. And then lastly, does it improve the process? It has to benefit the department or organization as a whole, and not just one person.
So this slide really highlights the resulting kind of secondary benefit in most cases. Your ultimate foundation results are going to be it improves the process and how easily something's done. But if you set it up on a singular platform where the data is connected and all dumps into a data layer, then you can use all of that and build out dashboards to make data-driven decisions. And all that data comes from a bunch of these different pieces of technology. And if they're all siloed, you can't take that information from this particular piece of technology and this one and pull it up through that experience data layer into a dashboard that you can then make some decisions on or evaluate projects or particular pieces of your processes quickly and make those decisions like we have with the safety OKR. And last but not least, and we've hit on this a couple of times, you need to eliminate or think about eliminating non-value tasks and really emphasize the value adds, right? Keeping a single sign-on throughout all your different parts and pieces. So in our case, when we log into Procore, we can pick one of these other apps, and because it's connected, we log right in to OpenSpace or to Builder or whatever, and we don't have 15 different sign-on parts and pieces. And remembering that value add may be different for your internal end users versus your external. Your clients may want to see something completely different, and it's important to them versus your end users, your engineers, your superintendents, and all that. And just remembering that it's got to either eliminate steps or net zero on tasks and steps for everyone's day, or there better be a very compelling reason to add steps. And hopefully in that result, you get more value out of someone's day.
Wrapping this up, remember $11.8 billion. You have to look critically at the solutions that are out there. And don't try to do it all yourself. Use your subject matter experts.
So again, can't emphasize this enough. You need to establish your process and stick to it. If you don't do that, things are going to kind of peter out and you're not going to get success. And you can't have those wins and communicate out that you are changing as an organization and you're making everyone's lives better and your processes are improving and you're meeting your business goals, and ultimately thinking about and making sure every step of the way that is it providing value to your clients, your customers, your internal and your external clients. Thank you for your time today, and I think we'll open it up for questions.
Thanks, everyone.